Welcome to the One Hand at a Time podcast. I'm your host, Chris Welton, and today's episode is going to be groundbreaking. Believe me when I tell you, you're going to want to have a notepad ready. There's lots of lessons to learn here from this conversation we're going to have. We had a conversation a week ago about creating this podcast, and we just knew we had to share it. So I want to welcome to the call one of the baddest MFers I know, Kent. Welcome to the call, brother.
Good morning, one and all. How are you, Chris?
Man, I'm doing wonderful, man. I'm doing so good. You know, we talked briefly last week about the 29-29 challenge, 29-0-29 challenge. And I know what it is. Obviously, you know what it is because you've done it. But give us a breakdown, a summary of what 29029 actually is.
So the best I understand it, this event was created because Mount Everest has just become a nightmare to try to climb. It's such a high value destination for so many people around the world. It's very crowded. Staging in and out's a problem because there's so many people at the bottom of it. There's a lot of debris on the mountain now that's accumulated over the years. And so these extreme sports enthusiasts are all friends of Jesse Itzler, who we all know is a giant thought leader in today's world. And they came up with the idea, what if we could do the same amount of vertical feet and give a lot more people the opportunity to participate, give them the same kind of life-changing challenge without actually having to go to Nepal and deal with all the other challenge, all the other struggles that people are dealing with that really want to climb actual Mount Everest. So they created the 29029 challenge, the vertical feet in Mount Everest. There's 29,029 feet. And so what they've essentially done is they rent out mountains and make arrangements with the various different owners of these ski resorts. And they calculate how many times you have to ascend the mountain to reach 29,029 feet. The particular event I did it in, for example, was in Jackson Hole at Snow King, and that came up to be 19 ascents to reach 29,029 feet, covering a little over 21 miles. And then you have a certain amount of time to do it. In my case, or in this Jackson Hole event, it was 36 hours. You can take breaks, you can sleep if you've got time or whatever, but one of the things we'll cover in this conversation is you really don't have a lot of time. And so that's what the event's all about. It's not a race, it's a challenge, it's not timed, and it's a way for people to go wrestle their demons maybe, or just really push themselves to the limits and find out what they're made of.
So essentially I can go to some ski resorts around the U.S. that Jesse Itzler set up and do the best we can to replicate climbing Mount Everest as far as how high we have to go and far we have to travel. Obviously, we're not going to be in the same conditions that we are if we climb Mount Everest. And I don't know if anybody's ever died in the 29 challenge, but people die every day on Mount Everest. So that's the other part for me. I'm like, okay, I want to do this challenge. I just missed by a few minutes last year because I wasn't paying attention. I was on stage at an event and I missed it, and I let my guy Kent down, or we'd be on this together talking about how we survived. But you and I are both from that mindset. I believe I call myself a little bit of a sicko, right? A little bit of a masochist. Like I push myself like with physical challenges just to see how far I can push myself, right? Like that's just how I'm built, right? And you made it very clear to talk about your demons, right? And I want to get into that with the demons part of it. But for me, this would definitely help exercise my demons to push myself not only on the mountain, but the training leading up to it. So my first question for you is, what do you wish you would have known before you embarked on your first challenge?
Well, firstly, we have to say this is a highly catered type of event, and they have great training and great let's call it uptake leading up to the event. They have a series of training logs that you follow along. You have coaching calls that you can join on in the weeks running up to it, 20 weeks out actually. And I didn't participate as much in the run-up as I really wish I had. I just only participated in a few. I was pretty fit going in, and I had my own ideas about how to train because Jackson Hole, the town of Jackson's at about 6,000 feet elevation. I live at zero elevation. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. There's no hills here except for one bridge. And so my training was a little different than, for example, somebody who already lives in the mountains or even lives, like a lot of the U.S. at elevation 2,500 or whatever. I had to use what I had available to me. And so I guess the one thing from a really physical training standpoint is you're on your feet a long time. And I did a lot of shorter burst training, hour and a half here, 2 hours there, even up to 3.5 hours. But you're literally, I think the total amount of time that I was on my feet out of the 36 hours was probably 26 hours. And it's just a lot of time on your feet. And so I, from a purely training standpoint, I wasn't accustomed to being on my feet that long and doing activity for that long a period of time in a row. I think I missed some of the, light duty networking that happens in the run up. You get the same people on the chat all the time. And then when you can see them when they finally meet each other in person, at the event, everybody's like throwing their arms around each other. Oh, it's so good to finally put a name with a face. I missed some of that, but, that's the biggest thing I didn't participate in, didn't get the full value of, I feel like.
Okay. So you and I talked, I believe the day before the event. You were there and we had a conversation. You had gone up the mountain once, like you got there a couple days early, but you went up the mountain once. And, when you went up the mountain the first time, did you think to yourself, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? Or I can't wait to just knock out these 19 times. I mean, what was your thought process?
I arrived to Jackson on Monday for the event, which was scheduled Friday. And, the first day I spent just getting acclimated, checking into the hotel, having dinner. The next day I went for a little, I do run a little bit. I went for a little 3-miler around town. Just really got accustomed to the altitude. Then on Wednesday, I met another gentleman who was participating in the event, and he said, "Man, I got it. There's a lot of people that entered. It's about 300 entrants. I think 288 started, and only 65% completed it." And I was like, "Wow." These are people who pay a lot of money to be here. These are people that train a long time, and that's a pretty high attrition rate. So I really had butterflies about what I was going to be able to do. Plus, in the town of Jackson, Snow King Mountain is staring at the whole town. There's nowhere you can go in town and not see it. It's like being in Paris and having the Eiffel Tower. It's just always looming. And so it was like the giant dragon at the end of the street there. And when he said he wanted to go knock the dust off of it, I was all for it. So we did do one ascent on Wednesday. Which really buoyed my confidence. It made me feel like I could do it. I was surprised, like really surprised at how steep it is. Jackson Hole is the steepest one of all the events that they put on. And it really was steep. And by all accounts, they've improved the trail a lot that we all use. They added a bunch of railroad tie stairs to the thing, but man, they're steep. Really steep. And, but I was glad to knock one off, and I realized too that it was not going to be an easy challenge. So that was Wednesday, took Thursday off, and then the event was Friday.
I can tell you this from somebody who's known you now for a couple of years and knows, how strong you really are. Sometimes I don't think you know that. And we have this conversation, but how strong you are. I knew you would finish. I knew you would get there. Like, barring any crazy injury, because we're both gentlemen in our 50s, which is like, the prime in our life, I feel. But I think that barring any injuries, I knew mentally you were going to get there. And I watched around the clock. I'd get up. I have a 7-month-old son, so I had to get up and feed him one time while you were on the mountain. And what I do before I got his bottle warmed, I came in and I got on the computer and I tracked you to see where you're at, right? And followed you intently because I knew that you were going to get there. But I want to talk about the lessons you learned on the mountain. Like, I've been through some big challenges, the Goggins challenge, and I've run full marathons, and I've put myself through some crazy stuff. And it's always to me when I started realizing the lessons I learned about myself by pushing myself is where the value was. It wasn't really about ringing the bell or finishing the challenge or whatever. It was about who I became away, how different I was when I left the challenge. So I'm curious, what lessons did you learn on there? Was there anything you feel different about, or more like that you now know that, man, I can even go even further than I thought? I'm just what's your mindset after leaving that mountain?
Well, first things first, I really appreciate the vote of confidence because while you might have been confident the entire time, I was not. There was a lot of moments on that thing where I was like, I don't have the time. I didn't train properly. I don't know what's going on here. It was, and very much unlike Everest. It was probably 90 degrees on Friday, the first day of the event, and then probably 87 degrees on the second day of the event. It was definitely hot, and the sun was powerful. So, like I said, I really appreciate the vote of confidence because there was a lot of times when I really questioned myself. But to your question, there's a few key takeaways, and none of these are groundbreaking, but it really, really reinforced. So I jotted some notes. If you see me look away from the camera a bit, I'm just trying to make sure that I hit all the high points. Firstly, when you get there, the demographic of the group that's doing this is not necessarily who you might think it would be. It's definitely not a timed event. It's a challenge. And the group of people that were doing it was everybody from young high schooler. You have to be 16 to participate. But there was a few people of that age group. And then there were people well above 75 years old and everybody in between. The mixture of male to female was slightly skewed female. There was a few more females than males that started it, and the age group was largely people in my age group. I'm 54, and I would say plus or minus 10 years. People from 40, maybe 40ish to 60, 65. It's a fairly expensive event to do, and you have to have a lot of time to train for it. And like I said, it's a life affirming type of thing. And, a lot of younger people are doing things that are more extreme, less of a grind. This thing is absolutely a grind. So the first thing I want to point out is it's definitely not who you think. It's also not who you think were the finishers. And I'll talk about that more in a second. But the first point I want to make is, like I said, while it's not a timed event, there are freaks among us. And I think there was one dude that completed it. And if I did the math, I heard his turn time was about 36 minutes per lap. So if you figure that out, that's around 10, 12 hours, a little less than that. That's cooking. I think he ran the whole thing. Okay. And so when we are in our lives and we're comparing ourselves to the performance of the next person, that's garbage, because I don't know his story. I don't even know. I couldn't pick him out of a lineup, which guy that was. I do know it was a man, but for all I know, he might have done multiple of these types of events. He may be an Ironman competitor. He may have a training situation that's completely different from mine. There was one female there who's from Jackson, and she is a daily mountain biker. Most everybody used trekking poles. She did the whole thing with no trekking poles, and she was crushing. And so we need to compare ourselves to ourselves from yesterday, and we need to mark ourselves by where we are going tomorrow and the next day. For me, I'm tickled pink that I was able to complete it. I figured the people that do it are probably in the top 5, or the people that finish are probably in the top 5% of fitness for the U.S. population. And so that alone makes me just buoyant to be in that top 5%. And then, like I said, only about 65% complete that. So, top 3% of fitness for the U.S. population. That's a great place for somebody. And, the viewers here don't know my story, but I've been 350 pounds in my life. In probably 2018, I couldn't have run a mile. And so I'm comparing myself to myself from yesterday, and I just have an eye on where I want to be tomorrow. And I left the mountain and I came right home. And as Chris, as you know, as a mentor and a counselor and a coach in my life, I have new goals. So I roll right out of them and into the next. And that talks about another lesson we learned. The people that completed this thing, the people that did the best, and man, I could go off on a bunch of different tangents about a bunch of different particular individuals, but I want to talk about one lady in particular. Her name was Allison. Allison was probably in her 50s. She was significantly overweight. She wasn't dressed in the athletic gear we were all dressed in. She didn't have the advanced hydration packs. But let me tell you something. I passed Allison over and over and over again, but she was never not moving, and she was never sitting. She kept after it and kept after it and kept after it. And Allison didn't complete all 19 ascents. But I'm telling you what, when they mentioned her, I'm getting tired. When they mentioned her in the post-event dinner, the entire place stood up and cheered. Man, she was an inspiration, and it wasn't about her performance; it was about her spirit. And man, it was some kind of something, And I would just say, it's not about being fastest. It's not about taking these giant steps. Like when I first started out, I had something to prove to myself, and maybe even the observers around me. The one thing I did to train was, man, I did stairs on top of stairs on top of stairs. I'd run to the local parking garage. It's 8 decks high. And I would just run stairs over and over and over a day, like I did when I was in high school in wrestling practice. And, that's the only hill we have to train on. So I get there and there's stairs. I'm like, cool, awesome. I've trained the right way. But the people that completed this were just the people that kept taking step after step after step. And you go up and then you ride a ski lift down. That's only like a 5-minute ride. It's not a big rest. Okay. And so then you got to figure out what's going on when you hit the bottom. You got to mark your last go, and then you go again. And if you lollygag, if you spend a lot of time in the gear tent, if you spend a lot of time, hanging out and chatting with people, there's a lot of people want to talk, and there's a lot of people that want to know what you're up to. There are a lot of people want to know how you're doing. For me, I ate on the walk. I ate on the run. I drank. I was constantly moving. I did not, and that's a lesson. So it's the baby steps over time, and don't lose time in the transitions. We have a big tendency to celebrate and take it easy after we have a big win, whatever that might be in life, and particularly for me and Chris, I know you're a business person as well. We have a tendency to take a big vacation, to take a big rest, and there's no time. There's no time to accomplish all the things I want to accomplish in life and take big rests between these major life events, And so, we got this microcosm of life happening in 36 hours on the mountain. But in reality, the same thing that works on the mountain works in life. And that's just don't dilly dally. We got stuff to do, man. It's like Jesse Isler says, I got this much stuff I want to do and this much time to do it in. Mm-hmm. So we got to get after it. So that for me was another big lesson. Another lesson that I really thought about a lot was, man, I was on the edge of quitting a bunch. We stroll around all day, every day, and our bodies really are nothing more than mechanical and electrical and chemical meat tractors for all intents and purposes that self-regulate. And this thing threw my body for a loop. As much as I drank, as much as I ate, as many electrolytes as I took in, by the end of the first day, my feet were just locked up, cramped. And then I would go to lift my foot up to try to massage that out. And then my quad would cramp. And then I would reach down with my arm and my tricep would cramp. I mean, my body chemistry was so far off. I got into bed for a few hours. I pulled all the blankets over me, and I'm still shivering under the covers. I mean, it's just really, really, really racked my body. There's so much time that I thought about quitting. And then I thought about, we've all seen the inspirational movies like Rocky or for me, Vision Quest was a big one, when I was growing up. And there's
Loud and Swain, baby, Loud and Swain. That's one of my favorite movies.
that's right. The rest, I keep telling people the rest of my life is my I want to wrestle shoot moment. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I really thought about, toughness we think about as the great battles, happening during the battle. But honestly, man, real toughness, in my view, is what happens on the ragged edge of quitting. I mean, it is not when you're being triumphant and you're just absolutely knocking it out and just overcoming your obstacles with deft and ease. It's really what happens when it's yourself versus yourself at the last moment, when you're like, can I take just one more step? Can I get to just, if I'm running, it's just, can I make it to the next light pole? If I just make it to the next light pole, then I'll renegotiate with myself. That's where real toughness lies, in my view. And then I would say, so I kind of came up with this little quote in my own head, which is toughness is what happens on the ragged edge. That's kind of the way I summarize that in my own head. But the last one I really think about is I thought about the ancestry, as I got there, and I'm too young my father wasn't in World War II. He was actually born in 1943. But both his father and my other grandfather were in World War II, and I'm like trying to summon the strength of my of my ancestors when I'm doing this thing, and I get to thinking about it. My grandfather on my father's side was a corpsman in the Battle of the Bulge, and I saw the series The Band of Brothers. Those men. And that, I'd like to include women, but women weren't part of that then. But women are just as tough, and they showed it on this mountain. I promise you that. Those people of that era and undergoing that thing, we're out here in a highly catered event, in tech wear, doing something that we signed up and volunteered to do. My grandfather probably dragged wounded men across frozen fields under gunfire. And I'm out here for 36 hours. He was probably out there for 36 days. And I really think about, I'm talking about toughness, what happens on the ragged edge in a beautiful ski town, under my own voluntary, power and desire to do this thing. I'd like to say that I touched the edge of my breaking point, but we are all capable of so much more than we ever imagine until we're put in that moment. And that really, 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 really resonated with me in that moment. And it really brought it out in me, is that I know now that I'm capable of so much more than I even think I'm capable of at the last moment. That I think I'm done. There's still much more in the tank. So I have a foot cramp. So what? I can walk on a cramped foot. I can take one more step on a cramped foot. And so those are I would say, of the lessons I learned, those were the key lesson. And I keep them in my little notebook that I carry with me, and I look back at them from time to time, and maybe I'll reword the way that I've got them written or whatever, just as in my reflection. And I'm really glad I did this event. It did have a huge effect on me, and it's another, again, a Jesse Itzlerism. it's another notch in the headboard. It's another item on my life resume
Life resume.
that I'm glad I did.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear this is that probably one of the reasons you and I connect so well is that we just don't quit. Like, we're not going to quit. Like someone may be faster than me, someone may be stronger than me. Lots of people are smarter than me and better looking than me, but I'm not going to quit, right? Like, I just don't have quit in me. It doesn't matter what the situation is. I will keep moving forward, right? I find strength in other things from my past, and I keep moving forward. What I love about this challenge, though, is that as you face more challenges in life, because we know either we're in adversity, we're coming out of adversity, or it's on its way, right? Like it's coming. This is something you can go back to and draw strength from time and time again. Like, throw whatever you want at me. I went for 35 hours with no sleep, really, my body breaking down, and that didn't get me. What you're throwing at me is irrelevant, right? Like, so I love that piece. But the lesson about the one step at a time, how do you climb a mountain? Well, one step at a time. And we talked about this. People were like going, you could run up those railroad ties, but you're using so much more energy running up those railroad ties than you were if you were just taking step by step by step, right? And it was about the conserving the energy, the lessons you learned along that way, which I found incredibly powerful. I was thinking about that the other day. I mean, I think I even created a post about it the other day about doing that, about how do you climb a mountain one step at a time, and how do you build a successful business one step at a time, right? Like, how do you go from 350 pounds to where you are now? One step at a time. Like, I mean, these are all great lessons to learn, but I think all these things come together with you when you're thinking about quitting, whether it's on a mountain, whether it's after a bad marriage or a bad relationship or after a bad business deal. How do we overcome those things?
Yeah,
One step at a time.
you're exactly right. And for me, you can't marinate. You gotta you gotta know what to do and then immediately do it. There's no time to waste. And I shared this with you before, Chris, but I'll say it for your viewers. I was in a situation not that long ago with something really threw me for an emotional loop. And in the past, would have, let's be real honest, I probably would have binge ate ice cream and watched Netflix for 2 days. But in this case, I said to myself, hey, I'm feeling some kind of way. And that is an electrical storm going on in my brain. It's a chemical storm going on in my body. And I can control those storms by changing the situation. And so what did I do? I laced, within an hour, I laced them up, went for a run till I was exhausted, ate something healthy on purpose. And I took a shower, complete reset. What could have been a multi-day spiral was a blip. And the same thing goes for business. You get a letter from the IRS. Hey, don't sit on it. Don't throw it in the pile. Call your CPA. Get that thing going. Figure it out quick. Don't let those things. Don't let those things throw you. You get turned down for a loan that you needed to make an investment. You get whatever it is. You just gotta keep going and keep stepping and don't lose it in the margins. I guess that's a good way to summarize it. I'd love to, Chris, if you want to give me a little latitude here to kind of show you some of the cultural things that are surrounding the 29029 event, because this thing has thousands and thousands of interested parties around the country and really around the world now. So the first thing you do is when you sign up and I call it the golden ticket. You get your ticket to go participate. And everything is super branded and it kind of builds the hype. And so that happens several weeks before the thing. And then when you show up, you're issued a white bib, and every climber has to climb in the white bib. As you make your ascents, not every ascent has a mountain on it, but these represent the highest mountains in each of the 7 continents. And so when you hit the height of each of those mountains, you get those marked off. In your swag bag, when you show up, you get a black cap that looks like this, but you don't get the red cap until you finish your final ascent. After you've done your second to last ascent, you get a red bib. So everybody knows that you on the mountain wearing a red bib are on your final ascent. Man, the support is just bananas. People are screaming at you from the ski lift as they're riding back down. You got, you switch from a whole sea of white to a few reds and some whites, and then all of a sudden it's a lot more reds, and it's just a really cohesive group. Everybody there has a story. Everybody there's got something going on, man. It's either, hey, I'm running for, because I in my small town, I raised money for cancer, or I'm doing this thing because, in memory of so and so, or in my case, it was just purely selfish, striving for reaching my own limits so that I could explore that space in my own soul, in my own spirit, my own being, And so everybody there's got a thing, and you don't, to, to some people, you have to explain, why would you do this, man? This is just pure self pugilism, but, everybody there gets it. You're with your tribe when you're there with people that are maxing out. And, so that's a really cool thing. And there are social media groups where, that are dedicated to this event. If you want to check it out, it's 29029 Everesting. If you search that, that's going to start getting you into the rabbit hole. But, I highly recommend anybody do it if they're looking to affirm the changes they've already made in their life and grow through it, additionally on top of what they've already done, or if they are looking for a reason to change. There was many people there that were like, hey, I just have been Cecil for so long. I've been immobile for so long. I needed something to strive for. There's one kid there. I call him a kid. He's probably 25, but this was his third attempt at trying to make it. One of the creators of the event brought him on stage. This kid, the first time, he was in such emotional distress. He lives in LA. He sold his car to raise money so that he could enter. People that are doing this thing make giant sacrifices because they know they need the life affirmation that it provides. So, I'm going to make a cool a shadow box out of all these items and hang it on my wall to remember it all by. But, the real memorabilia is the memory of the people and the tribe that's there. That's the real trophy. That's the real award.
So the question is, what's next to challenge you, and are you going to do it again next year?
I've thought a lot about that. People ask that question, and there are certainly a small tribe of people who've done it multiple times, and some of them are just awesome athletes. They each have their own reason to do it. For me, I would do it again, and I would definitely recommend doing it. I'm glad I did it the first time. I would definitely recommend it. I think for me, there's too many varied things that I'm after to immediately schedule another one. Uh, uh, I had some major life events happen, and Chris, as my coach, I know you know this. I'm just going to speak it out for the listeners. You said, "Hey, man, you've accomplished these couple of life events here, and I need you to pick a reason or pick an award for yourself." So, actually, in September, I'm going to Switzerland. I actually booked my plane ticket this morning, and I'm going to take paragliding lessons. That's something that I did a tandem once as a tourist, and I really loved it. But I stuck a couple of short-term goals between now and September 3rd when I fly out. I've got a goal to go from, I can do about 8 pull-ups in a row. I got a goal to hit 15, and I'm about a 10-minute per mile runner. And so I've got a goal to, get myself in shape to do a 9-minute pace 5K. So I'm working on my speed for my run, and I'm working on my pull-ups. That's my intermediate goal before September 3rd. And then September 3rd, I fly to Switzerland to go to do the, paragliding lesson. So yeah, I'm excited. And in between, I might have a couple business goals too that I'm not going to get into, but yeah, we've got man, I just did this. I'm excited I did it. I'm glad I did it. I would definitely recommend other people do it. I would definitely do it again the first time. Will I do it again? Maybe at some point in the future, but it's not on my immediate time horizon. But I tell you, it's given me the confidence to try a lot of other things. I may do a mini sprint Ironman now. There's a lot of other things that I may try to accomplish. I do like the challenge format as opposed to the race format. Um, there's a speaking of Switzerland, which Chris, you know this, but your listeners don't. I'm a huge Switzerland lover, and I think they have, if I remember correctly, I think I saw an event. They have the tallest staircase in the world in Switzerland, and they have an event once a year where you can go and run that staircase. It's like 1,600 vertical feet or something. That may be on the list. I'm not sure as far as the next giant challenge like this was, but I got a lot of intermediate stuff on the short term horizon that I'm looking to do. So.
Well, I know we talk about proof, right? Having proof that we can accomplish things. And this is the proof, right? This is the proof. Here's the proof. This is what it is. We need to get on social media. You need to share this with the people in your circles, Kent, because it's so important that people need to know this. And I have proof. I have proof of things I've done in my life, and I can go back and look and draw strength from them. This is something that no one can ever take away from you. You have this massive proof of something you accomplished, and now it's pushing you in a trajectory moving forward, which is, first of all, incredible for you, but second of all, incredible for your kids to see that, your boys to see that. It's amazing for them to see their dad doing that.
Well, definitely the you bring up the proof, or I think some people in social media, especially positively motivated social media, call it receipts. You're right. When you accomplish something like this, it definitely does bolster your willingness to try other very difficult things. And man, to the inspirational piece, a lot of people have seen my journey. I went to a very large high school. I have a pretty large group of friends on social media, and people have subtly and quietly said, "Hey, man, just keep it up, because you don't even know the effect you're having on me and people I know." And man, I tell people all the time. My first favorite thing to be called is daddy, and my second favorite thing to be called is inspirational. And so, if I will suffer the slings and arrows of people. My dad, my own father yesterday said something when he heard that I was going paragliding. He said, "Man, you're just living all the midlife crisis all the midlife crisis lifestyle, aren't you?" I said, "You know what, Dad? If midlife crisis means that I realize that I have a very short amount of time to do a whole bunch of cool stuff, then absolutely call me going through it." I embrace that, because to me, that's a sign of wisdom. If you realize that you're running out of time and you realize you've got things you want to do, then embrace it. And so I will suffer the slings and arrows of anything anybody wants to say in terms of a snide remark in order to inspire just one person like Allison. Because Allison, let me tell you something, she absolutely moved you talk about move, everybody moved on the mountain. Allison moved a mountain. She was truly inspirational. And if I can inspire one person, if I can do anything to inspire somebody else to reach higher, man, I'm all about it.
Look, I love the Allison story. I mean, obviously that's why we do those things we do. And for her, the strength she gained from that's incredible, right? Just going up there and making those things happen. I'm sure she was just awestruck by everybody realizing what she had done and
Yeah.
accomplished that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I want to wrap things up by saying this, Kent. I'm one of your biggest fans, if not your biggest fan, that doesn't share your last name. Okay. Your journey has been incredible since I've known you, and I can't wait to see what you do next. And I'm inspired by the 2929. I will not miss registration this year. I will make sure that I have somebody in my circle on there to get me registered, because it's something I need to do for myself. I need to make that happen. But dude, I cannot wait to see what you do next. And I love being part of this with you and watching you make history. I love pushing you and finding out what the next big thing is, man. So I truly appreciate being in your life.
Well, thanks for those kind words. I wouldn't have been able to do a lot of the things I've done without you. It's been a definitely a time of transition, and man, I'm just here for it. I'm embracing it. Life is, I love turning these chapters into book. It's awesome. I'm having,
Yeah.
I set out to have in 2024 the best possible life that I could have. I mean, I'm living a lifestyle by intention, and and man, I intend to keep it up, and as long as people keep listening, I'll keep sharing. So,
Well, we'll keep doing it. We'll make sure we circle back on this and some other stuff you have going on, because we've got some business strategies and stuff I know we need you to share with some other people and that you've shared with me. And I think that would make another great episode sometime maybe later this year. So again, dude, thank you so much for being part of the show today and sharing your story. And I can't wait to get this out for everybody to listen.
Let's go. Thanks for having me on, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into the One Hand at a Time podcast. Please make sure you like and share the episode. And we'll see you next time here at the One Hand at a Time podcast. Make it a great day.